Welcome to the Artist Work Ethic Podcast. I'm Mike Pelak. I'm a screenwriter, actor, and filmmaker, and on this podcast I talk to artists of all kinds who have seen success in their fields about their process, habits, and work ethic. Allison also played in a slew of other bands and created the nonprofit music festival Ladyfest. She currently teaches music journalism at UCLA, hosts and co-produces a podcast called I'm in the Band, does freelance music journalism, public speaking, DJing, and continues to play with Bratmobile. I'll be putting out some writing through Substack each week, and that's also how you can stay up to date on this podcast, as well as other projects I'm involved in. I hope you'll subscribe to read along at mikepelak.substack.com. That's MikePelak.substack.com. Please check out blackoilfilms.com/screenwriting. There you can check out some of the screenplays I've written. I have the first 10 pages of each one uploaded, but feel free to email me at theartistsworkethicpodcast@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to send you a full script if you're interested in reading. Last thing before we get into the episode, I would love anyone listening to subscribe, rate, and review the Artist's Work Ethic Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us put the show out there for more people to listen to. All right, Allison, thank you for coming on with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So going back early in your life, do you think that the work ethic that you have that has led to the successes in your life came from how you were raised, or some other factor in your life that brought that on?
That's a good question. So our work ethic, okay, I'm going to say our and we because I have an identical twin sister, by the way. Her name's Cindy. So if I ever say we and our, that's why. My father, well, I think both my parents were workaholics, but my father especially, and he's pretty OCD and stuff like that. So I could see how probably a lot of that, the kind of worrying aspect of work ethic came from there. But the funny thing is that my mom, who we mostly grew up with, we had a lot of fun in the house. It was pretty wild, no rules household. She was like an out lesbian feminist who started the first women's health clinic in Olympia, Washington, in our hometown. But my twin sister and I, we were like straight A students. We were super goody goodies, even though, I was at some point trying to be alternative and all that. I was still a total goody goody. I always sat up front in class, probably also because I refused to wear glasses, so I couldn't see if I didn't do that. It's funny because my mom never, ever had to tell us, anything really. But that's why we kind of had no rules. She never had to say, like, do your homework or study or whatever. In fact, I remember going to dinner once, and my twin sister, Cindy, she brought her books to dinner. My mom rarely took us out to dinner. So it was like at most once a month, kind of a special thing. And she brought all her school books, and my mom just yelled at her and was like, oh, she was like, can't you just enjoy life for a moment? And she also said, would it kill you to ever just get a C? I mean, would that kill you? So, I mean, my mom was almost the opposite, trying to tell us not to get A's.
Yeah. Like there's a time and a place for all that.
So it's kind of funny. So in a way, I don't think, at least that's not what my mom was telling us, to work hard necessarily, even though she worked hard. She also, I think we were asked to be in some of the smarty pants types of programs or whatever in grade school. And she held us back from that. But I did not find this out until I was much older, that she once was talking to a friend. Oh yeah, they tried to put my girls in one of those kind of programs. Oh, I just thought, well, I don't want them to think they were better than everyone else. And we were just like, oh my God, Mom, you made us, we always wondered why all our friends got to do that and we weren't. And it made us think we were like kind of stupid or something, that maybe we weren't smart enough. So it was all that kind of stuff. She never really encouraged us to even apply for scholarships, which she should have because she didn't have a lot of money. But all that kind of stuff, it was very hands off. But then my little sister Molly came along, and I think she was more of a rebel and needed some more guidance. Or I'm not saying her grades were bad, or she's very smart, but she definitely was, kind of a Wild one. So
I almost wonder, like listening to you talk about that, kind of relating it back to music, and eventually you find yourself, touring in a punk band. It's possible that maybe that hands off kind of anything goes in a way fostered that mindset that would eventually lead you to take those chances that maybe someone else might not have.
yeah, I think it was important to my mom to just be like, go find yourself, go be yourself, figure it out on your own. Hoping for self-discipline. Although sometimes I feel like I probably could have used a little more guidance and nudging in a certain direction, or at least just knowing that some of these options existed
Sure.
and not being kept back from them. Yeah, I think she encouraged us to do that. But she also really believed in a hard work ethic. I mean, she grew up poor in just outside of Omaha, Nebraska, with big Catholic family, working class. Yeah, and I think she did have to work very hard to get to where she was against all odds, and split town and make her own life and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes I think she probably felt like we took a lot of things for granted. You know how it is
Sure.
when your parents worked hard to provide something for you and then you just kind of squander it.
Yep. Yep. Been there.
So I
Uh,
feel a little bit like that sometimes.
once you found yourself in the punk scene and DIY and those sort of contexts, how did that then affect the way you work, or the way you approached your bands?
Well, I think it really only you only work hard when you really enjoy something or you're passionate about something or you're scared of the consequences of not doing that work. I find that as much as I think I'm alternative and punk and all that, and I went to Evergreen State College, which is, no grades university in Olympia and all this stuff. It's just great. But I found actually by going to Evergreen that I don't have a lot of self-discipline, or I only have it when I'm passionate about something, or I'm on a roll, or I'm getting OCD about something at a particular moment, or I'm scared of not doing the thing on time or something because a boss or someone will come down on me. So I find that I definitely work better with hard deadlines and someone kind of telling me or barking at me or someone I have to be accountable to. So it's actually, I function a lot better in, I think, kind of more traditional settings like classroom settings or job settings. But I need the freedom to kind of shape the job or whatever in my own way.
Yeah.
So I will fight back and tell a boss or whoever exactly what I think if I think they're doing it wrong. And my dad was like that too. He definitely worked very hard, but he always kind of pushed back against his bosses or whatever. And he lost a lot of jobs that way. And also, he was actually a doctor in Vietnam War. And he tried to do something. I mean, he was trying to save more people than he was told to deal with. And he was an anesthesiologist and he managed to intubate like two people at the same time when he was told they only had enough whatever for one. And he tried to save two people, and his boss, or whatever, the captain or whoever, got him kind of for insubordination and sent him to the DMZ.
Hmm.
Like he paid dearly for that. And it's like, but he just did what he thought was right. And so I think I and my sisters have a lot of that in us as well, where it's like I do kind of need someone telling me, giving me some structure. I need structure, but at the same time, I need to be able to kind of tweak things in my own way. And if something doesn't make sense, I can't do it. I just can't. If I just think like not interested or that the way that you want us to do that makes no sense, I won't do it.
It sounds like it's just being assertive, and making your voice heard in whatever the situation is that's in front of you.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't know. Like I worked at the Washington Post. I've worked in print journalism for a while. When I worked there, I mean, first of all, I was in a band in bands touring a lot, so I was really part-time. But I just never tried to go up in the field or, I just did not care. It was also a lot of it was during the Bush W administration, and I really felt like the whole newsroom was drinking the Kool-Aid, even though I know none of them voted for him, so I didn't get it at all. So part of that was part of it, the disdain. But also, I just realized could never go that far, especially in hard journalism, because I just cannot cover something I'm not interested in. Because I'm not just some necessarily natural born writer. So I have to really like it to do a decent job, or at least be interested in it to do a decent job.
What's an example in your career, thinking Bratmobile, one of the other bands that you've been in, an example in your career where you've made your own luck through, hard work or taking a wild risk type of thing? I've always found that interesting, the little actions that people take that kind of open the doors to the better, the bigger and better things.
Well, I think I had to leave town and then come back, to kind of start something. Maybe I felt too intimidated in Olympia, even though I was very inspired by the DIY Olympia Washington music scene. But I went to University of Oregon in Eugene, and that's where I met Molly Newman, and we started Bratmobile. So much of what we did was like a band in theory, and everything was in theory for a while. Eventually, we did a zine, and then it kind of worked up to the band. But I think just having someone to kind of like be a girl gang with and plot and plan and all that really helped. And we were just motivated actually out of boredom and being stuck in a hippie town. We were just sort of like, we have to make something happen here. And that kind of idea of DIY really, and Riot Grrrl really incorporated this, was you have to be a participant in your own scene and in your own entertainment and your own community. Like, create the community you want to see and be a part of, as we know. So I think we were also really driven by that. It was like, there ain't nothing to do or nothing we want to do unless we create it or help create it or something like that. So I think that really kind of got us going. And also somewhat a reaction to like some of the male chauvinism stuff of grunge at the time, which grunge was super strong in the Northwest since the late 80s. So by the early 90s, even though we loved all the bands, but we still kind of felt like, there's a lot of sexist imagery and whatnot. It's like, and we have something to say. Let's do it. We don't know how we're going to do it, but the kind of, I don't know, non-traditional structure of bands at Olympia, Washington kind of helped us encourage us too, to think we could do it. Also, the Girls in Bikini Kill encouraged us to do stuff. But yeah, so I think a lot, just that kind of, I don't know, desire to work with other people, and you kind of cultivate this raw talent to create something out of really community and friendship and just wanting to connect with people. I'm very, very social. But also back then, just remembering that everything was, it was pre-digital, pre-internet, pre-social media, all that.
Yeah.
So I did work hard. I booked a lot of tours, and I booked like the first tour we did in 1992. You get a printout from either K Records or later Kill Rock Stars labels, and then they had been gathering the information and trying to keep it up to date based on bands that would go on tour and report back. And then they'd pass that list on to the next band that wants to go on tour. And you would call on landline whoever to try to across the country. But at least back then, there's like, well, there's this one person in this town that you're supposed to talk to get a show. Okay, it wasn't quite that hard, but
Was it like a precursor to Book Your Own Fucking Life?
I think so. I don't know, when did that, I've actually never read it, believe it or not, but when did that come out? But no, I mean, our first tour was summer of 92. So for Bratmobile, so I think so. And we just I had to just call people, and people don't realize that long distance phone calls, that was a big deal. It was expensive money I definitely didn't have. So the whole trick was to call someone in the middle of the day when you thought they might be at work, leave a message on their answering machine, so then it's on their dime to call you back when they get home from work later. And it's that stuff. Or there's a lot of like stolen calling cards,
Yeah.
which usually were stolen from a punk kid, from a punk kid's parents, and then passed around to all their friends.
Yeah.
And they only lasted like 2 to 3 weeks, because it was always just the next credit card cycle or whatever, when bill cycle, when they'd realize their card had been stolen. So there's a lot of that. But I remember also just confirming the dates using a postcards. Like I sent out postcards right before you hit the road to confirm all the shows. Also, you had to send a demo tape. No matter how big you are, everyone demanded a demo tape, probably because they just wanted free
Yeah,
music.
they just want the free thing.
So I remember having to pack up demo tapes and things like that to every date, every play venue, whatever promoter really. But so I worked hard at that. And back then also someone had to have a role of calling ahead each day to get the directions to the next place, right? There's no GPS or
Yep.
anything like that. So there's just so many more steps and so much more work, really. But it's just so fun, that adventure. And I think the desire to have those adventures makes you work hard for that.
What lessons did you take from Bratmobile that you've carried into, I know you teach at UCLA, you are involved in journalism, like you said. What lesson, I hate saying work ethic too many times, but what lessons from that time? Like I can think to myself, I know that, the things that I learned when I was 16, 17, first being introduced to the punk scene in New Jersey are still in a lot of ways the way I conduct myself today, in my career and with my kids and all that. What have you taken from Bratmobile into your current life?
Sometimes it's hard to say because I think there's a lot of punk damage that goes on, with punks and that imposter syndrome really is also that you just sometimes you look back at what you did and you don't realize it was work, but it always was at least half work, right? Going on tour, being in a band, it's always at most half fun and then half work.
Yep.
And just it's almost like you have to try to figure out a way, another way to look at it where you can look at the value of the things you did and how can it be translated into work, well, into capitalism really. And I get it, we shouldn't necessarily only be valued by that kind of capitalistic worth or something capital, but in a capitalist system you do have to figure out how to translate those things into like work or resume or whatever. And I have to say it's not easy, and I often downplay things and downplay my skills and all that, but really looking back you're like, well, you tour managed and booked tours and organize all these things for your bands and everything. And it's like, there's a lot of people who actually get paid decent money to do those things. But oh yeah, we'll do it for negative whatever. But
Yep.
so it's just trying to recognize that, hey, you knew how to do all these things. You directed all these things. And then how can you put it on your resume to make it sound like something? So I don't know. Yeah. But also, I think the social aspect helps me a lot. Like, I'm just very social. I love to talk and tell stories. And my parents were both like that too, my whole family. I do a lot of public speaking, which pays, not a lot, but it pays decently and it's fun and interesting. And sometimes I just can't believe it's like, oh, I'm getting paid to talk. Great.
Well, maybe you could
Um,
even relate that back to being on stage and becoming comfortable on stage and where you might not have been otherwise.
Exactly. And I think that, each time I've been in a band, it's funny how each time my first show with whatever band, whether it be the first one or any first time of a new band to be on stage, I always have a fear when I'm first up there being like, what am I doing? Is this a real band or are these real songs? And I still get that way. It's bizarre. But then once we just kind of get going, once I'm up there and we start, I'm fine. I relax. I'm fine. I can, because I just love interacting with people in the crowd and everything. But yeah, like being able to take those experiences from stage and applying it to like public speaking, yes, or like doing my podcast or hosting a podcast and all that and teaching actually because I teach. And so I remember when I first was asked to start teaching, I it was when I was living in New York, and it was just it was for an ESL summer job or something. I was in between jobs, so a friend asked me to do that, and I was like, I don't know, I've never taught before. And she was like, you're a singer in a band, so that's half what teaching is. It's half performance. So I was like, okay, great. So I did it, and I did realize that I had that part nailed down, the social aspect and the performance aspect. But I definitely had to work really hard to have something to back it up with, like real knowledge,
Yeah.
real grammar, detailed knowledge. So that was the hard part. But now, now I can do both. So.
So what's a goal that you still want to accomplish in your life, whether it's musically or some other aspect? What's that thing it's still in the back of your head, always nagging at you?
Well, one thing is I really need to get my podcast back up and going again, or at least to have it come out regularly and stuff like that. I've been kind of postponing that for a while, and I need to just focus and be like, you love doing this. There's a lot of stories still left to be told. Okay. But also writing, or like writing a book or something, or I want to do an oral history of Riot Grrrl book, but also I think sometimes the whole looks so overwhelming and you forget. I need to remember to break it down to the parts. It's like, okay, well, if you break it down to small parts, you could probably tackle those.
Yeah.
But I always look at the big thing and get overwhelmed. So I'd like to, or also just writing my own book, like whatever, telling my own stories and family stuff or whatever, I really need to do that. And I just haven't been real disciplined about it, but I get distracted easily.
Yeah.
I go out a lot. I'm just kind of doing so many things that.
I think your instinct is right in chopping it up into small manageable parts. I mean, that's the way I approach, writing a 120-page script. Is once I've managed the outline, I'm like 2 pages a day, and it keeps it from ever being like, I can't sit down and write for 8 hours. That'll just never happen. But I can carve out 40 minutes, and tackle those too.
Well, this is a do as I say and not as I do. So I read that somewhere. Someone told me that somewhere, and I have to remind myself of that, just like you're saying that. So thank you for reminding me too. So I need to do that. I don't know if that's my instinct though.
Is there anything you want to plug before we go?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do. So I do have my podcast. I'm in the band, not with the band. And it was named after actually a Bratmobile song. But the whole idea is to have conversations with musicians who are somewhat marginalized, not normally considered to be the typical who's in the band or who's in a band, or people who have been kind of underrepresented in that way. So I love doing it. But I also, because I went to USC Annenberg School for Journalism and for the arts journalism graduate program. So I focused on audio, and I also really believe in trying to sound design the pieces, to not just have them be a record. Okay, I press record 2A, here you go. So I think that's also, I put a lot of pressure on myself to have them highly sound designed and all that. So it take me forever to do each episode. But anyways, all of my episodes are on my website. I have a page for my podcast on my website, but also through the streaming service Tidal. But I realize there's a paywall for that. But also on YouTube. Tidal has a YouTube channel, so you can get most of them there for free. Bratmobile is playing a whole bunch of shows coming up, like so New York and Pitchfork Festival and Punk Rock Bowling in Vegas, LA, wherever. I would love to get to other countries. So if anybody wants to bring us there, please contact our booking agent, Concerted Efforts. There's also, what else am I doing? Well, I'm teaching at UCLA. It's a music journalism class with a focus on radio podcast. So that's really fun. I teach it once a year, 1 quarter per year. I probably should do it more often, but I want to tour the other quarters. So, or trying to at least. Yeah, what else? I don't know. There's got to be something else. I DJ sometimes. So, but those are just all the things I kind of have been enjoying doing. I love to travel, so I kind of figure out how to do more of that.
Awesome. Well, Allison, thank you for talking with me today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today. Please subscribe to the Artist Work Ethic podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts, and please rate and review the show. Follow us on Instagram at The Artist's Work Ethic,